Okay, so now our BOM component rule. Remember, our BOM component represents a manufactured item in Syteline. Okay, so the first BOM component rule will represent your top level job. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these. We'll just build a real simple structure, and then I'll get into the structure I built for this presentation. Excuse me. Okay, so again, I was talking about the top level job here. So this is our top level job. So if you look at the parent component attribute here, you want to keep that blank since it is the top level job and it does not have a parent. And then each BOM component rule that you add to your configuration after that, so as you're building your subjob structure, that's going to reference the parent component ID that's in your first BOM component rule. And that's how you build your structure. So the component ID here is ISYS_CUR_PART. Okay, so as we're adding other BOM component rules, you would want to make sure that you reference that ISYS_CUR_PART in your parent component ID. Okay, now something else that you should also be aware of is this component ID needs to be unique throughout your rule set. So since your parent level job, if you're going to use ISYS_CUR_PART, okay, the next BOM component rule has to be something else. So we'll just call this component A. Okay. So you need to make sure that those are unique throughout your rule set, or you'll run into some problems that we'll look at later. So again, that structure, it's really important. It's really important that you understand how that works. So we have our parent component ID, and then we're referencing back to that parent component ID throughout all of the BOM component rules that we're putting in the rule set. Okay. The part number field on this must exist in Syteline. Okay, so we can just call this, let's call this customer hours. Okay, we've already talked about the component ID must be unique. Something else that I would recommend is to keep the ISYS underscore or the config component sequence, just keep it at the system variable. What will happen here is as you're running through your configuration, the configurator will just set this value. I see problems typically when you hard code this value, 1, 2, 3, etc. So if you just leave it at ISYS_CUR_component sequence for the config component sequence, it'll be a lot smoother for you. Let's see what else we have here. The operation number must be an operation that exists for the parent component. Okay, so for this subjob, for example, on this operation number, this has to be an operation that has been defined for the parent. So if you put an operation 10 here, up in this parent level item, you would need to have operation 10 defined. And in our parent item, the operation number must be blank or unassigned. Okay, again, because it's the parent item. And again, we're going to go through this in a little bit more detail in a rule set that I've built here in a few moments. Okay, so let's talk about job BOM configuration. Again, for the BOM component rules, and this is pretty much the same thing that we just talked about. So, but it's really critical. If the item again is marked as job configurable in Syteline, then the job BOM will be created based on the structure defined in the configurator model. Okay, if the item is not marked as job configurable, then the job BOM will be created using the current BOM in Syteline. Okay, again, back to the fields that we just looked at on the configuration tab for an item. Okay, and I said this before, regardless if the structure has been built in Syteline, if you don't have it marked as job configurable, it's going to look at the current BOM in Syteline and it's not going to bring over what you have. And I have an example of that in the rule set here shortly. Jobs will only be created for manufacturing items. So if an item has been defined as purchased, the job bomb will not be created even if it's been marked as job configurable. So if that flag got flipped somehow, you just want to make sure that that your item is manufactured if your jobs are not being created. Okay, so let's move on to a material rule. Okay, and that's this guy right here. So this represents a material in your product structure. The example I always use is a purchase part. The material ID must be unique, just like our component IDs on all of our BOM components. The material ID must be unique throughout the rule set. Okay, so we're going to call this part A. Okay, and its parent component ID is ISYSCURPART. Okay, we also have to fill out the part number, so that's just the part number. Now the part number does not have to exist in Syteline. Okay, if it does not exist, it'll create it as an item in Syteline on your BOM as a part type other. Okay, so I'm just going to put part A in here. The operation number must be valid for the current BOM component. Okay, so we're going to put in 10, and we'll go back and we'll define an operation for that in a minute. And then you can use this create new line attribute, which I don't have defined here, but I'll get it added. I'll get that updated in my template when we run through it. We can do that now, actually. So I'm going into the Manage node here, Design Studio, opening up System, and going into Rule Templates. Okay, and these are basically just different attributes that you can turn on and turn off for the manufacturing rules. So I'm looking for the Create New Line attribute. Okay, so the create new line attribute, what this will actually do, if you set this value to 1 for material, this will, when the configuration is returned to Syteline, it'll actually create that. So let's say, for example, for a customer order line, it'll create a new line for that item, and you can also bring a price in for that as well. But the key with that is that the item has to exist in Syteline, otherwise it will not do that. Okay, so the next rule, let's go take a look at an operation rule. And again, this represents an operation in your routing structure. Just put my variable name here. Make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. So again, now we have a component ID on this field as well. So this is going to be operation 10. And this is going to be for that parent component, so its component ID was ISYSCURPART, so I'm just going to keep that. I'm going to give this operation a name, so I'm just going to call this paint. I'm going to put in a work center ID, so one that I know that's in the application demo database is PMT-10. And then there's other attributes that you can fill out as well, but that's all I'm going to fill out here. Okay, so now we have an operation for this BOM component rule. Okay, and remember I said that the child operations have to reference a valid operation of the parent. Okay, so I'm going to put that in for this subcomponent here, and I'm also going to put that in on my material rule. Okay. The final manufacturing rule that we're going to talk about is a work instruction rule, and this represents again item operation notes in Syteline. So again, that component or material ID must reference a BOM component rule, whether a job or sub-job. So in this case, this is ISYSCURPART, and it also must represent a valid operation number. So again, component ID for our, put in an instruction number here. Component ID of our parent job here is ISYSCURPART. Okay, the instruction number, so if you have multiple instructions that you want to send, so let's say line 1, line 2, or step 1, step 2, you would just increment the instruction number field and then put in, so like test instruction